I'm here.
Good
Hey,
stuff.
Jamie.
Hi.
So Rob may join. Okay, well, given that it's 4:30, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Welcome everybody to our regular monthly meeting of the San Rafael Library Board. I want to say one thing before we start. You may have received an email just before noon today from Jinder, and you see Jinder in the upper left-hand corner for those who don't know him. The City Council has been doing some things where they call on people, on their members sequentially to make comments or ask questions or whatever. And in a large setting like the City Council meetings, that probably works very well. But that's a little more structured than we did last time for our board meeting. We were a little more informal and democratic, I think, calling on people as they raise their hands. And so we're going to try it the democratic way this time, not going through that structure that Jinder had mentioned. But let's see how it worked. I want to get your honest comments at the end. And you know, let's see how it works to do it where people raise their hands and comment. And if it doesn't work, if you feel like you weren't able to get your comments in when you wanted to, you got cut off too soon or whatever, then absolutely we'll change the meeting to make sure we meet the needs of our board members. So with that said, I think our first task is to call the roll. Jinder, you want to help us there?
Yes, Trustee Cortez.
I had to unmute myself here.
Trustee Duke Hughes.
Here.
Trustee Fromm.
Here.
Trustee Lentini.
Here.
Trustee Ross. Chair Labresco.
Here. And then Jinder, can you say something about how people can participate if they are, we don't seem to have anybody at the moment, but if there are members of the public who join us or people calling in from outside who want to jump in?
Sure, it looks like we have one attendee.
Oh, great.
Good evening, everyone. Viewers are welcome to provide public comment online through Zoom or by telephone at 669-900-9128. And the meeting ID is 869-1656-8941#. If you are watching the meeting on Zoom and wish to provide public comment, please select the raise hand feature either on the bottom of your screen or through the participants icon. If you are participating by telephone and wish to provide public comments, please press *9 when the chair opens the public comment period. When it is your time to speak, you will hear a notification that you have been unmuted and you will have 3 minutes to provide your comments.
Okay, thank you. So does anybody have any changes or amendments to the agenda?
Question. So Henry, I'm sure this is a user error, but when I click on the link that you send, I'm not getting the full agenda packet. And so I went back and I found, like, I went not through the link and found something else and then saw that on the library page, it went to agenda and then agenda packet, but am I missing something? Because I just did it again right now to pull it up because I'm on a different computer and I can't pull up the packet.
You'll notice that there's a couple of tabs. The one on the top says agenda, and then the packet is on a tab that's immediately behind the agenda tab.
All right, I will keep trying to play with it. Is there any way to do it as an attachment as well in the future? Because I don't know if this computer, on my other computer it worked, but on this computer it didn't.
Just a sec. You want Jinder? Can you email her directly the packet?
Yes, I just did.
Okay.
Oh, thanks, Jinder.
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky. There's a couple of the way it's in the portal of documents on the city website. There's some tabs of the different the agenda separate from the entire packet.
Yeah, like I said, I saw it on my other computer, but on my laptop, but in this one, it won't show up that way. So I don't know, but anyway. All right, thank you.
All right, no problem. So let's, before we get to Cheryl, our new member, let's take a look at the minutes from last time, and anybody can vote on that, whether you're at the meeting or not, believe it or not. Any comments on the minutes? Any corrections? Anything that needs to be changed there? All right, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Chair Labresco, since we have one attendee, I believe I have to read the public comment section of the script.
Related to the minutes as well? I think you just did read the public comment section, right? Isn't that what you just did?
There's public comment for every item on the agenda. So on the script, you would open it for public comment. And then, yeah.
Any public comments about the minutes from last time?
I'll go ahead and read the script for that. If you wish to provide public comment and are watching this meeting through Zoom, please use the raise hand function to let us know you would like to speak. If you are participating by telephone and wish to speak, please press *9 now. You each will have 3 minutes to provide your comments.
Okay. I see no comments. So
No, I don't see any hands raised or anything. So yes, continue.
Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from last time?
I'll motion to approve.
Do I have a second? Okay, looks
I'll
like
second.
Claudia
I'll
is
second. Thank you.
second. Okay, Jinder, could you call the roll so we can vote on this, please?
Trustee Cortez,
Aye.
Trustee Duke Hughes,
Aye.
Trustee Fromm,
Aye.
Trustee Lentini,
Abstain.
Trustee Ross,
Not
Chair
here.
Labresco.
Aye. Okay, the minutes from last time are approved. All right, the next item on our agenda is welcoming our new member, Cheryl Lentini. And can I just say the way we like to do this is that every board member who's here will give just a quick introduction about him or herself so you can get a sense, Cheryl, of who we are and how long we've lived in San Rafael and such, and then we'll ask you to do the same. So I guess I'll start. I've been in San Rafael for 25 years. I have 2 kids who are out of college who use the library constantly when they were young. I use the library constantly as well. Big fan of libraries, and I work in marketing research. So there you go. Who would like to go next? Yeah, Adriana, was that your hand?
I can go next.
Okay, Claudia.
I'm Claudia Fromm. I've lived in San Rafael now about almost 40 years. Use the library a lot, big fan, and I have an adult daughter and son-in-law, and about to be a grandparent, first time in the next couple of months.
Wow.
And I'm a marriage and family therapist with an office in Kentfield. So welcome.
Okay. Adriana, you want to go next?
Sure. Welcome. And my name is Adriana Duke Hughes. I have lived in San Rafael for 5 years now, 6.5 years in Marin. And yeah, heavy user of the library. My 2 elementary school age kids have been using both the physical and the online library resources and the different offerings that the library has. And I work as an advisor at a research-based firm, working with clients across the globe on their, management practice.
Okay, thank you. And Jamie.
Hi, Jamie Cortez. I have been a resident of San Rafael for 8 years now, and joined the library board because when I moved here, I knew absolutely no one, and we basically took my little daughter to the library and story times, and I feel like she's grown up there. So I love the library and love the services. I am a philanthropic advisor at the Marin Community Foundation.
Okay, well, with that as an introduction, Cheryl, tell us a little bit about yourself and welcome to the library board.
Well, thanks everyone. It's really nice to meet you all. I have lived in San Rafael for just about 21 years now. And I am also an avid user of the library. Mostly it's ebook collection at this point. I am an architect, that's my profession, and I am in business for myself now. Been working for about 35 years at that. And I'm really looking forward to being part of this group. My sort of connection to find my way to you is through the Library Foundation Board. So I've been serving on that board for a few years now, helping, sort of shepherd the new library along. So looking forward to being able to be an even bigger part of our library system. So thanks. It's nice to meet you all.
And if I can just add that Cheryl and I were on a committee together that has been meeting a few times to try to move the new library along. And she's been a terrific member for that library. So library committee. So I'm so excited that she's decided to join our board. Okay, how about then if we move on to the next item on the agenda, and thank you to the staff for putting this item on here. Several of us had asked about this last time, and here you've put some work in and you have a whole presentation for us, which is great. It has to do with racial and social equity and what the library system is doing about that. So I think Jill Harris, you are up.
Hello, everyone. Let me just get my slides up. And everybody can see the slides?
Yeah. I can.
Cool. All right. So good afternoon, Library Board. Thank you for the opportunity to present at this meeting. My name is Jill Harris, and I'm a supervising librarian at the Downtown Library. So I'm going to talk about race and social equity initiatives at our libraries, past, present, and potential opportunities. And I just want to note before I get started that I'm going to be using the acronym BIPOC, which stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color. Racial inequities are currently at the forefront of political and social discourse across the US and globally due to the murder of George Floyd in May. I want to emphasize that this is not a new movement for BIPOC activists. This sea change is largely white folks in greater numbers than ever, waking up to the reality of systemic white supremacy that started hundreds of years ago and persists today. That said, clearly the murder of George Floyd has already had an unprecedented effect on the policies and practices of organizations everywhere. Just hearing elected officials, local, state, and national, stating unequivocally that Black Lives Matter is a huge leap forward. So I'm framing this presentation based on a pre and post George Floyd world, followed by potential opportunities for the library. So some of the things that we have done pre-George Floyd for many years before, I've already talked about at previous board meetings, or other staff have presented at previous board meetings, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. But some of the things we've done have been kindergarten, first grade family nights that target families that speak Spanish, that face barriers to library use to kind of create, welcoming, safe space for them. Our racial justice book club with Marin Surge. Surge is showing up for racial justice. Our Storytime Any kits that feature books with diverse characters that represent our community. We have very awesome displays for various heritage months. Significant one is removing the MLAS requirement from our librarian job description, which has removed barriers to folks who have qualifying experience, but not necessarily the means to get the master's degree, let alone an undergrad degree. The city came up with an initiative to collect homemade masks, and that's been coordinated by the library and recreation department along with other city staff for the masks to be distributed to unhoused folks. A couple of years back, we really made an effort to translate more of our promotional materials and web content into Spanish. And then more recently, we actually started translating some of our stuff into Vietnamese. Our Tales to Trails program created access to public lands for local families as well as older adults who are homebound, or really just anybody who lacks access to public lands. Our Park Pass program has a similar job. It provides access to local parks and is done in partnership with Marin Community Clinic and the county parks. We did a library card drive where we issued every student a library card in the San Rafael City School District as well as Miller Creek. And then we also had our New Americans campaign citizenship legal clinic. So at this point, I think it's important to acknowledge a debate that's been happening in the library world, especially in the past 5 to 10 years. Are libraries neutral spaces? We are moving towards an understanding that not all issues have two sides, that an opinion that's not based in evidence, that indeed is based on the hatred, oppression, and harm of a particular group of people, is not something we want to give voice to in our collections and programs. More than that, the library perhaps has an obligation to align practices with oppressed people and support social equity at every opportunity. So these are just a couple examples of initiatives that have sort of questioned libraries as neutral spaces, or have put you know, this kind of change in thought into action. So American Library Association made a statement that they stand with the Black Caucus of ALA in standing with Black Lives Matter and condemning systemic racism. ALA Midwinter had a pretty well-known in library land panel discussion on the subject of libraries as neutral spaces. And then a couple examples in youth services, which of course is dear to my heart, of librarians, you know, having an effect in what is published and having more representative collections are American Indians and Children's Literature and the We Need Diverse Books campaign, both of which have had a lot of influence on our work. And in response to the most recent presidential election, a group of youth services librarians formed a collective known as Storytime Underground that has definitely influenced our story times and programs to be more inclusive and reflective of our community. So this is a infographic that is frequently distributed in library land that shows the huge disparity in children's books and representation of different races and cultural backgrounds. And I just want to point out that there are significantly more children's books that feature animals as the protagonist than BIPOC protagonists. So then the murder of George Floyd happened. We have seen white people out in the streets and joining the movement in larger numbers than ever. Our police chief, mayor, city manager, and county board supervisor marched side by side with the people and BIPOC activists who have been living with and fighting white supremacy here in Marin for so long. The city has stated unequivocal support for Black Lives Matter. The mayor has created a task force to address racial and social equity in San Rafael. I encourage all of you to watch next week's City Council meeting on August 17th, during which the council will be discussing proposed policy changes regarding use of force by SRPD and other changes to align with the 8 Can't Wait campaign. So the library is moving in a consistent way with the city of San Rafael on these issues. So these are some examples of things that we are doing now in response to our post-George Floyd world to support racial and social justice initiatives with the city and for the community. So we created a resource list for the city's racial justice page. We have created recommended book lists and materials lists that you can find on our catalog and also on our social media for all ages on anti-racism and also just books that represent diverse characters. We created a special budget for anti-racist books because we've seen, you know, the number of holds on those books surge in recent months. We altered our service model at Pickleweed for curbside service to allow for walk-up service because we saw that appointments and just using the catalog to get books was not serving that community. So we adjusted our service to create a more equity. And very recently, myself and a couple other staff here have met with our colleagues in Marin County Free Library as part of an equity and distance learning team. And so far, what we've really just been doing is kind of, you know, comparing notes and sharing ideas, but it opens up the possibility for a partnership to provide support for distance learning to youth who are going to struggle with that more. Finally, here's some opportunities and potential goals for us, working closely with the board and city council, if these things were to become initiatives, to support greater racial equity in San Rafael. So one of these opportunities is to create an actionable racial equity plan. Another opportunity is to go fine free. That's something we looked at in the past, and it remains an opportunity to break down barriers and create greater equity in our community. And then finally, bringing universal borrowing, not just to our library, but to all the Marin libraries. And I can go into more detail on that if anybody has questions about that. But long story short, universal borrowing refers to anybody in California can get a library card at any library in California to borrow physical materials. And at most libraries in California, that's extended to digital items, but for whatever reason in Marin, it has not. So creating universal borrowing for all of our digital resources will allow people who work in Marin or live in surrounding counties to use our electronic resources. Thank you for your time, and that concludes my presentation, and I'm ready to answer any questions that you all have.
Okay, that's great. Hey, I just have one quick question and then I'll open it up to everyone else. Jill, do you have a rough idea of what the ethnic composition is of San Rafael? And obviously there are a lot of Hispanics in one part of San Rafael, but overall, do you have a sense of our city's ethnic composition and whether each of those ethnicities is represented in about the same proportion in the library?
I have a sense of the demographics, but I'm actually just pulling it up right now from the most recent census. Let's see. So yeah, it looks like population estimates based on the census data is 67% white, 2% Black or African American, less than 1% American Indian or Alaskan Native, 6% Asian, 4.8% biracial, 31% Hispanic or Latino, and yeah.
Sounds about right. Who else has a question for Jill? Yeah, Jamie.
Well, Jill, thank you. And I was, so I have a few questions. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. When you were talking about what you did, sort of your pre-work, I just wanted to say that I really always loved the Heritage Month work that you all did, especially the Women's History Month with the little, I don't know if they were bookmarks, but the little kind of
Trading cards, yeah.
which I thought were really great. And really talking about successful, especially women of color, and the history there. And so one question is, how do you see that sort of transferring online? That work?
Yeah, so we actually have done a couple of social media campaigns to try and kind of bring those displays online. So we did a campaign where we featured queer authors with a special focus on queer authors of color for Pride Month. And we also had an Ask a Queer Adult. We did an Ask a Queer Adult panel previously, like in person in past years. So we did an online version of that where we had little kind of featured, graphics with the person's picture and their advice for their younger selves. And so that was really cool. We did one for Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month, Black History Month. I mean, we've been just doing a lot of content about literature by Black people for, most of the year, really. So yeah, we've been bringing that stuff online as much as we can, usually through social media.
Okay, great. My second question is, so I know that there are a lot of food distributions in San Rafael. Like, I don't know if you've seen the recent video of the Venetia Valley work that was being done. That was the collaboration with the congregation and with Dine 611 Marin, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm just wondering if there's been a thought of bringing the books of the library to them, you know, with the bookmobile or other aspects of that, especially where, you know, food distribution is happening.
So we actually did do book distribution at the end of last school year. And I realized I forgot to put that in the presentation. But yeah, we had like several hundred, maybe even over 1,000 books that were going to be prize giveaways for summer reading. And we realized that summer reading just wasn't going to happen in the form that we'd offered it in previous years. And we decided that kids would be better served by distributing those books at the meal sites. So that is one thing we've distributed through meal sites. We have talked very tentatively about possibly using them to distribute books to older adults, or to have volunteers with another city department distribute library books to older adults, but that's like really vague at this point. I'm not even sure whether that's getting traction or not. So it's definitely an opportunity. One challenge with that is that, you know, we have much more limited resources than we did in the past. So, you know, I don't know how we would acquire books for giveaway at this point.
If I can just jump in for a second, you know, for a lot of years now, the library's been represented at the Thursday night farmers markets, which of course aren't happening this year. And I've worked at those farmers markets at the library booth quite a few times. And of course, Henry's always there, so he knows better than I, but it just always seemed to me that a tremendous number of Spanish language books were given away, especially for kids. So I just want to second what Jamie said. If there are other ways we can get books into the hands of kids, especially if we have a lot of Spanish language books, I think that's terrific. We should all think creatively of ways to do that.
Thanks, Jill. And then lastly, just really quick, I really would love us to talk about how we're going to bring the fine-free conversation back, because, you know, we obviously didn't have meetings for a while until last month. And so I don't know if, you know, Josh, you know, I don't know any of the rules or guidelines nowadays, but if we can put this on the agenda for next time, bring a motion to talk about it and start developing the policy.
Yeah, Henry, I don't know if you want to comment on this. My understanding is that we are waiting still for the city to rethink its fines and charges in a lot of different areas, and the city has to do that before the library can. Is that correct, Henry?
Yes, Chair Labresco, we are doing a master fee study for all the fees from the city, and the library fines are part of that master fee study, which unfortunately was delayed due to the pandemic. So I recognize that that's of concern to the board, and when appropriate, we'll bring that back in a kind of report out from that study when it is completed.
Do we need to be advocating to someone about that from the board's perspective?
So maybe I can help. So the master plan, the master fee schedule update is going through the process of being reviewed by staff. And I actually just asked the question before this meeting to find out when the project manager thinks that different parts of the master fee schedule will be presented to the respective boards and commissions, like planning, park and rec, as well as the library. So I'm waiting for a response. But what they will do is they will come back to the various boards and say, these are the recommendations that staff are making, which include, by the way, fine free. And then to get your feedback on if you are in alignment and agreement with that. So based on previous discussions, we already included that in the recommendations. We assumed that's what you wanted. So
yeah, I think we absolutely want to discuss it, and it may be that everybody on the board feels fine free is the way to go. I don't know. We really haven't had a good discussion about that. So I think we'd love to discuss that when the time's appropriate.
Absolutely. So we'll let you know when that's supposed to be scheduled to be brought to the library board of trustees. It should be before the end of the year.
That's great. Thanks very much, Susan. Anybody else have a question for Jill about her lovely presentation? Yeah, Claudia.
Thank you so much, Jill. Very informative. I just had two suggestions and maybe you're already doing them. So there's this organization called Extra Food in Marin, and they're just servicing so many people, including Road of Shalom and Venetia Valley across the street. But organizations like them and Whistle Stop and other organizations in San Rafael could be really great for the older population. There's so much isolation. I think there was just a big article in the IJ in the last couple of days. But, you know, through some of those food programs and other things for older adults, I'm just wondering, there might be a good opportunity for outreach.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I can speak a little to our outreach efforts to older adults. So we recently resumed our outreach to older adults / homebound service. And the first step in that was touching base with different, retirement communities in the area to provide them with service. They sometimes have staff that can come pick up books for their residents. And we're also looking into, how it would work to do deliveries to those places. Eventually we're going to kind of continue to pilot, models into COVID reality for service to individuals who are homebound or just older adults who are vulnerable to COVID. And just kind of in terms of the nonprofits, a lot of the partnering with those folks is happening at kind of a higher level than us, like through the city's EOC. And of course, library staff have been involved in that. We had a library staff person working on care and shelter, food distribution. We currently have a library staff person who is working on a project to address the COVID crisis in the canal and provide kind of wraparound services to those folks. But yeah, a lot of that's happening at kind of a higher level than us.
And the other question, just in terms of, I don't know if this fits under the same category, but there's been such a rise in the country and even in this county about anti-Semitism. And I didn't know if there were, a good listing of books. I haven't checked into it about that subject. So I just wanted to check on that.
Yeah, I'm sure we have a list at some point, but it's definitely something we could update. At one point we had a substitute librarian who actually was an expert in that area, and she did some like amazing collection development work for us in that area. So I would say our collection's pretty robust.
Good.
And there's definitely demand for it. But yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and if you need any help on that, I know the rabbis at the two big congregations in Marin and the staff, and they'd probably be helpful to get you some of their best choices too, if you wanted to bulk up the list. I think you just froze.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I cut out for a little bit.
Do you want me to repeat? Did you hear?
Sure. If you need, I got like, we need any.
If you need any suggestions, I know the rabbis at the two major temples in Marin and their staff, and I'm sure they'd be happy to help you. And they have it's not open now, but the Road of Shalom has an actual library. So I'm sure their librarian would be happy to give you her top 10 or something.
Yeah, that's good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments from, yes, Adriana?
Yeah, thank you for sharing this. I think it's always been timely, as you say, it's always been relevant, and now it's just enhanced in terms of attention. So I'm glad that you have been doing those heritage events and so on. My question, and I have to say I'm impressed that you are able to find so much content, because I know that part of the problem is that the stories told by and about BIPOC are just not published in the first place because of lack of diversity, inclusion in the publishing houses sometimes, which is of course your supply, and an assumption and belief that the stories of BIPOC are not of general interest. Of course, it's not inclusive. So question to you, have you found this a challenge? Have you done anything, to increase your supply? And is there anything that you have and could do or wish you could do to, increase that supply, especially now that we can publish books online without the need for an editor, yes, but not a printing house. So yeah, that's my open question.
Yeah, so kind of within librarianship in general, there's definitely been a push for diversity in children's literature, and in particular what we call own voices titles. So titles that feature diverse characters as protagonists that are actually written by people of that culture or race or heritage. And there's definitely been more of an effort on the part of library people, staff, to push publishers on that, and to demonstrate through our circulation numbers and sort of promotion of those books that there is a demand, that there is a need. I've seen the demand increase, in particular in Marin, compared to like when I first started 10 years ago, just because more and more people here, are, in particular white families, are awakening to the need to do anti-racist work with their children, and that those books are of interest, even, though they're not people of color themselves. At a more local level, we've just tried to collect as much as we can, books that are high quality, that feature diverse characters, that either talk about racism or just feature, BIPOC characters like doing normal things, having lives, learning to swim, and going to summer camp and having pets and things like that. So not just about race and about civil rights. And sometimes that does mean purchasing books that are self-published or by very small printing presses, and we just kind of do the work to find those things. And it helps to do professional development, go to conferences. That's how you kind of find out about those things. And author panels, we get to hear about great authors who are, self-publishing or,
That's wonderful that you're reaching out to not just react to the supply, but to influence that supply. That's really great to hear. Thank you.
Jill, in addition to trying to make sure subjects are diverse, how are we doing at coming up with enough Spanish language publications, especially for kids? In Pickleweed, it's a pretty large percentage of our collection, but have you found it difficult to stock enough Spanish language books that cover as many subjects as you might want to?
Certain formats are harder than others. And one challenge is that a lot of those books traditionally, up until recently, we could only acquire through like special book fairs or directly from different vendors that sell Spanish language books, which meant that we would have to do our own processing and sometimes our own cataloging. But more and more, the Spanish collections that are available through our main vendor that sells us pre-processed books are available. And, we just do our best to have as robust a collection as we can to meet the demand. I would say like early readers is an example of books that are, it's hard to meet the demand for those, but it's changing all the time. And we're definitely finding more of those more easily through our main vendor.
Are we also finding some demand for even things that aren't regular literature, like math and science books among maybe early middle school kids who might find they understand those subjects better if they have a choice of language in which they read it?
I wouldn't say there's as much of a demand for that among youth because most of the youth, especially by that age, do speak English fluently. That said, we of course do have new residents, youth who are coming here who are learning English. And we do have nonfiction books for them in Spanish. But yeah, honestly, the demand for books by that point, by that age, is usually for English.
I was thinking that in this exceptional time, if parents are trying to help their kids with homework, there may be some parents who
Definitely.
might find it easier to help if they had a little Spanish to help them.
That's where the demand is more, yeah, with the parents who are learning English or monolingual Spanish speakers. And then, I mean, another complication to that is that a lot of folks who are coming from Central America, Guatemala in particular, don't actually speak or read Spanish. They come here speaking indigenous languages. So that's another thing we take into consideration.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Jill? Whether you've spoken before or not, I just want to make sure everybody has a chance. All right, well, I think we're about done, but if I can just make one last comment. I think all of us are on the library board because we like books, but I think we're also really proud of the library for trying to serve the community in ways that the community needs the service. And we're proud of what you're doing, Jill, and with Henry and Susan and others. And just thank you. It makes us excited to be on the board.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're done with that item. The next item, as in all
There's public comment supposed to be on the item.
public comment on that item. I don't think, do we have anybody from the public who's on? I don't
Yes,
see
there's
one.
one attendee, so I'll have to read that script.
Okay, go ahead. How would we even know? I don't see the person in the square or anything.
I see the attendee on my end.
You got it. Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead and read the script and we're happy to hear any comment.
Okay. If you wish to provide public comment and are watching this meeting through Zoom, please use the raise hand function to let us know you would like to speak. If you are participating by telephone and wish to speak, please press *9 now. You each will have 3 minutes to provide your comments. There's nobody raising their hand right now.
Okay. You know, Ginger, if it's possible, I've done a fair number of Zoom calls, but you're probably much better at this than I. If it's possible to include any outside people, either with their own rectangles or with telephone numbers or whatever, so we can at least know if they want to say something, that makes it a little easier, but whatever works for you.
So the attendee actually did raise their hand, so I'm going to go ahead and allow them to speak now, okay?
Terrific. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Hi, my name is Stacy Counson. I'm enjoying the meeting and I love the library and books. I'm here on behalf of the San Rafael Heritage Commission. So I'm waiting for an item later on in the agenda, but that's why I'm here.
Okay.
Enjoying the meeting.
Terrific. Thank you. And that's coming up right now. We always have a space in our agenda for public comment on items that are not on the regular agenda. And that may be where you're going to have a chance to jump in, Stacy. It's a 3-minute limit. And I actually want to make one quick comment myself, which I probably should have made under approval of the minutes from last time. But I just want to say, for those who were at the meeting last time and wanted to make sure that the documents from previous studies about the library got posted so that anybody who was interested in reading them going all the way back to the 2003 study, those have now been posted thanks to some computer work by Jill Tokotomi and by Susan Andrade-Wax. And so all those things are on the website. If you click on the bottom of the San Rafael Library website where it says about the library, and then you click on that and it says something about new library project, you get to that page and you'll see a place where you can click and read 6 or 7 studies going all the way back. So all the information is there now. Okay, so any public comment, I guess that's probably you, Stacy, on items not on the agenda.
So we're in the public comment section, item number 3 now.
Correct.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and read the script.
I think we got it.
Okay, so if I don't see any hands raised, so we can continue on to item number 4.
Okay, sounds good. So the next item before the board has to do with the teen space safety policy. And you may remember that we back when we were all allowed to see each other in person, we had a little tour of the new teen space, which is up on the second floor. For those who are new to the board, if you haven't seen that, you know, when the time comes, you can take a look. It's been sectioned off and painted nicely and with some books in a special array. And so the staff have been thinking about rules for the teen space, and that is this item. So Henry, is that where you want to jump in?
Thank you, Chair Labresco. I will now present about the draft teen space policy. And then I will show you a copy of the draft teen space policy. I'm going to share my screen just a sec. So can everyone see?
I can. If you cannot see, jump in and say so now.
Okay, as the chair mentioned, this was an item that was slated for the agenda for the March meeting, which was unfortunately canceled due to the onset of the shelter in place and concerns about COVID-19. So we're bringing it back to the Board of Trustees. Josh mentioned that what the space looks like, and I have a picture of that in my presentation. Just an overview of why we have a teen space policy. The best practices in public libraries. So if you Google teen space public libraries, you will find most every library with a teen space has a policy that says that space is for the exclusive use of teens and or people working with them, but that adults aren't allowed to sort of occupy the space apart from using the collection. So they can't set up there with their laptops, etc. And you know, the policy is meant to make sure that it's a friendly place for teens and to kind of, you know, really kind of carve out a space that they feel comfortable with. Our new teen space opened in January 2020. It was a group effort, including the Teen Advisory Board, as well as multiple staff. If you visited the library before that, you may have seen multiple staff members sitting behind the service desk on the second floor. Those staff members, due to the departure of the literacy project downstairs, were relocated, and that upstairs space, approximately 400 square feet, was reclaimed for public use in a way that really was more appropriate for teens, in that the previous teen section, which was across the aisle, was not really its own section. At the same time, we combined young adults books from in the children's area with the teen collection from upstairs and put it in its own kind of separate area close to where staff sit and kind of separated from where the majority of adults occupy the second floor. And letting the teens kind of decide about how the space would be organized, what the colors would be, what the signage might look like, gave them a sense of ownership of that space. Here is a picture of the new teen area. You'll notice the big sign that says teen. It has a magnetic sort of notice board below it. There's 3 kite tables below that that are kind of sort of interesting shaped tables that can be rearranged in various shapes and configurations. We have some well-engineered beanbag chair-like furniture that teens can sort of relax on, you know, in a sort of more casual way. There's also some little tabletop signs there in the middle of those 3 tables that say this is for 6th through 12th grades. Teens are defined as from 6th through 12th grade, and saying that if you're not part of that group, this isn't a place for you to set up. At the same time, it should be recognized that people working with teens, like tutors or homeschool parents, are allowed to to work with teens in the space, just not unaccompanied adults. So it should be also noted that the collection is always available. So if you're there to get a book, to kind of look for a book, to browse the books, that is totally okay throughout the library. In a similar way, in the children's area, we don't allow unaccompanied adults just to hang out there, but they can go there to browse books and select books. So this is a little bit of draft signage. You'll see this teen space. Can you see that? Teen space policy. All patrons welcome. Seating is for teens 6 to 12. Tutors are allowed. Patrons required to follow the San Rafael Public Library Guidelines for Library Use, which is our general behavior policy. So this is a kind of draft of what the sign might look like. And then I'm going to now stop my share and share the actual wording of the policy, and then we can go to comments and questions if that's okay.
That's great.
So here is a draft of the policy. You know, we're committed to providing an inviting and safe space for teenage patrons. Teens are welcomed. The space is designated for their unique needs, and we have sections 1.1 through 1.5. The first one, that it's 6th to 12th grades. The second one, recognizing homeschooling. And the third one, that people can come in and browse the collection but not use the furniture. The fourth one, tutors are allowed to work with students. And the fifth, that the library reserves the right to do programs in that space. So we often have small teen get-togethers that happen in that space, often with pizza, because if you provide pizza, then teens magically appear. And then a little bit on behavior guidelines. In some other libraries, you'll see a lot on this. You know, the behavior guidelines, we expect them to respect the environment, not be disruptive, that the library policies apply to the teen space, and that we reserve the right to restrict the use of that from teens who are not kind of following the rules. So with that, and one more thing I wanted to mention, Lindsay wanted me to make sure to tell you, as it approaches 5:30, we have a hard stop at 6:30. I think we'll have plenty of time, but just so everyone knows that there's another meeting coming up after this one, and we need to be done by 6:30. And with that, I'll leave this up so you can refer to it if that's useful, or I will stop sharing if people would like me to do that.
Well, if you stop sharing, then I can see if people have questions by seeing their hands. So at least for me, if you can stop sharing.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, I'm stopping sharing. All right.
All right, so who has questions or comments for Henry about the teen space and policy? I do not see hands at the moment. I have one question, Henry, which is, I know you have this teen advisory board, which has been fairly active over the years. What kind of role did they play in helping to design this, and how do they feel about it so far?
I believe it's a small group. They helped pick out the colors or the paint, some of the decisions over the furniture and where things will be located. So with the pandemic, they've met less, so we had some teen virtual programming. And I believe that they're happy with the space and the fact that it's kind of their space. Before, we had sort of just a teen wall rather than kind of like a teen area. And we constantly had the problem of adults occupying that sort of teen area. So now with this new policy, we have the opportunity to really have a carved out space just for them.
Okay, and I know it's been a while since we've actually been open, but did you find that the teen space was being used fairly often?
if you build it, they will come. So yes, it took a little while for people to understand that it was there. And we had some adults that we had to kind of explain why they couldn't set up there. But we noticed that teens were using the space, and we're excited to see them in their natural habitat and enjoying what we had created for them.
Nice. And how did the adults react when you threw them out? Because I'm asking, sometimes when it's really hot or rainy out or whatever, a lot of people use the library. It's pretty crowded.
Yeah, it is an area that was a staff area before, so we're not taking away adult area. But I have, from previous places I've worked, had to have this conversation multiple times, because usually the comeback might be, I mean, some adults are fine, they understand, and they're happy to live elsewhere. Others observe that there's no teens there now, so why can't they use it? And so you have to kind of explain that it needs to be left open so that they will use it, and by their very being there, they would prevent others from coming. Sort of like the observer changes the experiment. And so it can be a little bit like awkward, but as it becomes more sort of standard operating procedure, most adults are happy to find an equally attractive other place to occupy.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? How about from anyone outside who's observing, who would like to comment on this subject? You're always welcome. Ginger, any comments coming from
We still have the same attendee. And I
Stacy,
don't,
any comments, or you want to just sit tight and continue on?
I don't see any hands up right now, no.
All right, then I think we are done with this item. Thank you for the work you've been doing on this, Henry. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
It looks great. It just looks great. Okay, our next comment, our next agenda item has to do with the fourth quarter library budget report. Don't know if you all received that. It has some text as well as a lovely multicolor chart of where we are. So Henry, would you like to introduce and comment on that, please?
Thank you, Josh. You have, as part of the packet, item 5, the review of the fiscal year 1920 fourth quarter budget report. And what I'd like to do is share my screen with attachment 1, the budget spreadsheet, and then I will go over the highlights of the report, and you can be looking at the budget spreadsheet if that's okay.
Yeah, great.
Ready? Okay. Here is the budget spreadsheet. It's at 50%. Let me just do a little of this. Okay. That should be useful. Can everyone see that? And if not, you should have it in your materials. So I think the most overwhelming thing about this particular quarterly budget report, and it's the fourth quarter, so it's cumulative for the entire fiscal year, and it should be noted that it's an estimated, so the books haven't completely closed, but things are still a little fluid. So this isn't like audited numbers, but it gives you a pretty good sense of where we are. And the main takeaway is that because of the shutdown and the spending freeze, we didn't spend all our money this year in overall. And if you look at the spreadsheet from left to right, the yellow part is general fund, the purple part is parcel tax, and the aqua part is those combined. Overall,
hey Henry, can you give just a quick introduction?
Yeah, I'm going to.
What they'll be? Thanks.
Yeah. So overall, the general fund is 74% of our library operations, and that's money that comes directly from the city. The parcel tax provides about a quarter of our budget, which is about 26%, and it comes from a per parcel allotment for all the parcels in the city of San Rafael, both single and multi-use. Single is around $50+. We're in the third year of a 9-year parcel tax that started in 2017, I believe it was renewed. That first one was Measure C, the one now is Measure D. The Friends of the Library also provide about 1% of total operations budget, and that's around, we expected around 35 last year, we got around 28. We expected about $1,082,000 from the parcel tax, and we got just under that. The general fund revenue was expected to be, most of the library is like money out the door, but we do bring money in. The small amount of revenue that we get is from fines, and we expected that to be 38,000 this year, and we brought in 27,000 for multiple reasons, including that we weren't collecting fines due to the pandemic, and that in general, since all the libraries around us have stopped collecting fines, our kind of ability to command a large revenue stream from fines has steadily been decreasing. So as onwards to this quarterly report, I would say this is the most anomalous report probably since we started doing this. We have never had like a spending freeze or an economic kind of problem of this nature. So overall, we talked about this in our last meeting. The city took about a $12 million hit on property tax. So we stopped spending from about March through June. But when you look at the revenue highlights and the expenditure highlights, there are some items where we were over in the budget line, mainly with extra hire, because we have 6 open positions in the library. So we have been in an ongoing state where we need to hire more temporary staff to backfill those open positions. Utilities went up, so we had, that was larger than we anticipated. But the spending freeze really made us underspend in building contracts, maintenance, office supplies, books, periodicals, audiovisual, and travel and conference. And we were able to shift a little bit of money from the general fund to Measure D, particularly bills for training and instruction that would have gone to the general fund, but we had to move over to Measure D. And in Measure D, the parcel tax, we were also underspent in programming, books, periodicals, digital materials, and technology supplies. So,
Henry?
Yeah.
There is just one correction. I think you mentioned that there was a shortfall of $12 million in property tax. It's sales.
Oh, sales tax. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you, Susan. Yes, it's sales tax. Just a little more overview. We bring these reports quarterly to the board. You'll see the bottom line across the 3 columns, totals where we're over and where we're under. So for general fund, we're looking at 86%. For parcel tax, we were only 66% spent. And that adds up to an across the board percentage of 81%. On the bottom, we also total out some of our other monies that have been in the orange section to the left. You'll see the 214 fund balance, the copy fund donations, Kay Corlett, Kenneth Edlin. Those are all sort of donation accounts that we keep separate from our regular operating expenses. We've been very lucky over the past several years to get some memorial donations of over $1 million in one case. that the library can save up and use for when we need to build a new library, for example, or for other expenses ongoing. And then the Measure C parcel tax capital set aside, which is below the Robert and Lorraine Hoses Memorial Fund. That was in the beginning of the previous parcel tax measure. There was a set aside for the new library that accumulated up to, I think it was close to 400 and something thousand. And a part of that was used for the architect's fees for the latest study on the new library. And the monies that we don't spend year to year from the parcel tax, for example, we're underspent on the Measure D parcel tax at this point. Those roll over into a fund balance that is higher than it's been in a while. We're looking at $373,073.99. So I know there's a lot of numbers in there. Sorry, the 12 million was for property tax. But it is kind of an uncertain time where we've taken a big economic hit. The library's overall reduction this year did remain at 2.5%, which was reflective of the fact that we have 6 open and frozen positions. So this quarterly report is underspent in a way that we wouldn't have expected. We weren't able to really do anything about it because of the spending freeze. And we're just going to move forward into the new fiscal year, not knowing exactly where we're going, but having a budget that's pretty healthy in relative terms to the other economic problems the city and the nation is facing. And that concludes my presentation. I'm going to stop sharing now, if that's okay. Hi, Rob.
Hi.
Henry, are we asking questions now? Hello?
Especially new ones, there isn't a quiz on this. It's not like you have to know this spreadsheet backwards and forwards, but because many of you have diverse sorts of business experience, you know, we're always interested in comments people have, things they've learned in their outside experience that might help the library in different ways. And so it's nice that we're able to take a look at this every quarter or so. So who has questions or comments for Henry about this presentation? I think that must be Jamie. Go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, you can. Okay. No, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, can you reiterate or re-say it again? I just want to make sure I didn't miss it. So the parcel tax money that will roll over, and the general fund money just goes back into the city of San Rafael general fund, or you don't get to roll that over into the library budget, right? For next year, can you just reiterate where the additional funds go?
I've worked at one place where our general fund money did roll over, but no, the general practice is the general fund money goes back, and to sort of solve the $11.8 million deficit we were looking at. But the parcel tax money does roll over into a fund balance, so it's not lost. Unfortunately, it doesn't roll over line by line. Some of the staff were hoping that it did. So for example, if we didn't spend all of our book budget, it would just go into the book budget for next year. It rolls into a cumulative account that then has to be spent at some point. And we're hoping to maybe do that this year, hopefully, but we don't have any specific plans around that as yet, as things are somewhat unknown. But we're lucky.
Other questions or comments, raise your hand and I'll be happy to call on you. I have one, Henry. I just want to understand. You have 6 positions that you have not filled because there's a hiring freeze. Are there any other ways in which you've been asked to cut expenditures by the city?
Yes, if you refer to our previous meeting, we talked about a 2.5% cut in expenses, and those included cuts in travel and training, in office supplies, and in the book budget. I think we cut about 20,000. Most, if not all of those things are reflected in a healthy balance, both in the Measure B fund and funds in the general fund. So the 2.5% cut to the overall budget, which totals about $70,000. And then the 6 open positions. One other important thing I almost forgot. Every city worker is on a furlough. So we're all giving up 5% of our pay, and that equates to 13 days where we will not be working and not getting paid. So the furlough money is another impact that we're taking, both in terms of library service and compensation for all employees, non-safety employees, that is. So yes, the furlough, 2.5% cut, and open unfrozen positions.
Okay. Any other board members who have questions or comments for Henry on this presentation? How about any outside comment from, I guess Stacy might still be listening in, or if anybody else has added?
Yes, we still have Stacy, and I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. All right, Henry, thank you. Thanks for keeping us up to date on this. I think we're moving on to item 7 on our agenda, which is any reports or of meetings or conferences or seminars that board members might have attended that could be relevant to our board. Were there any things like that?
I have item 6, the work plan.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped item 6. Let's go back to item 6.
I think I was going to share my screen, but Susan's going to talk.
Okay. So we have let me just introduce the work plan quickly for Susan. For those who've been coming to these meetings for a while, you know that Susan and Henry had recommended that we try to think through some of the items that come up on a regular basis, and also think through some special items and see where we might slot them in during the year. Obviously, if board members have specific things they'd like to discuss, we can put them on the agenda for the next meeting or the meeting after, depending on where they all fit in. But Henry and Susan have done a little work on trying to space out some of the key topics, and that's what Susan's going to talk about now.
Hello. So thank you, Chair. So yes, most of the, I'm here, I'm going to move this over so I can see. So most of the boards and commissions have a work plan that they use as a platform to help schedule and kind of plan out their work for the calendar year. So working with the board earlier this year, we came up with a template. Little did we know a pandemic was going to also happen. We didn't plan for that. As you'll see, it's not in your work plan, so therefore it shouldn't have happened, but it did. So at this point, we thought it would be prudent for us to bring it back to you. We have a couple of new board members, and for everybody to review it together and to see if there's some items that may need to be shifted or added, or not pertinent anymore. So really, at this point, I don't know, Henry, if you can enlarge that. I'm going to try to, here, I'll just look at the official copy. There we go. So as you can see, we had a few months where we were not conducting board or commission business, but as of July we did. And in July we had the city's COVID-19 response and service modifications in regards to what the library did. And then we also had the library budget update, which also included the city's COVID economic response plan, as well as details about the library's budgets and reductions, which Henry just kind of highlighted for you. This month, it includes the 3 items that we've just reviewed, including your work plan, and then so forth. Beginning in September, we have a couple other things that we have planned. So in September, we are going to have a budget presentation for you from the city's finance director. She will be able to answer a little bit more in depth questions in regards to the city's budget, the city's COVID economic response plan, and also the sales tax initiative that will be on the ballot in November and why that is so critical. And if it doesn't pass, what type of reductions we're looking at. So we thought it was fantastic that she was available to come and attend our library board meeting next month. And then obviously our favorite topic, we will be reviewing and providing you with an update on the conceptual design RFQ for the new library conceptual plan. So next month is a big month. And then the following month, as you can see, the master fee schedule update is planned to be reviewed by the library board at that time. So we're crossing our fingers. I just got confirmation as we were on this meeting that it does look like we might be able to bring it to you in October, November at the latest, but let's hope for October. And then Henry can go and give you a little bit more information in regards to the book industry standards and communications.
Thank you, Susan. Book industry standards and communications, also known as BISAC, in a nutshell, is an alternate way of categorizing our books, and so it's getting rid of Dewey. San Mateo County Library has done this. Anythink libraries in Colorado, Maricopa County. Dewey has some particular shortcomings that are made even more glaring due to the recent focus on equity and inclusion. It's very kind of skewed towards a Western sort of white privileged viewpoint, and kind of doing away with that would change the way that we sort of categorize things in the library. More information to follow.
Thank you, Henry. You will also notice on the right side of the work plan, we have presentations. The budget presentation from the finance director should actually be in that column. It's not an actionable item, it's informational only. And we will also be bringing forward things like the census update, as well as the senior outreach update and things like that. So at this point, I mean, I think we can all review this together. We're not sure if there's any other items that you've been thinking about that you would like to discuss and possibly recommend for placement on an upcoming meeting. But this would be the time, Chair, if you could ask for any kind of feedback.
Let's go back. Stop sharing your screen then so I can see everybody, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
And that's great. And if I can just say one thing, on the bottom there where you say possible topics, a lot of these look like things that the board has suggested over the last year or so. Some of them might be appropriate to include soon, some not. What's your thinking about some of those?
That really, let me see if I'm good. That really depends on a couple of things. I would like Henry to weigh in on some of these things and see if they're timely, kind of when they really kind of fit into our schedule. But also to get the feedback from the board as to see what items that they feel are really significant or important.
Okay.
Should I weigh in now?
Please.
Okay. RFID isn't on here. We talked about that in regards to automated materials handling, but given that many libraries are closed to public use in the county, the MarinNet Consortium is considering implementing radio frequency identification for our books. And I can tell you more about that in my report from the MarinNet board, but that would be something that we might want to talk about. Car accessible book drop was an idea of having a book drop either in Tam Valley or on Lucas Valley Road that's kind of been held up by the pandemic. A visit from the emergency manager, depending upon her availability, that could be exciting. Other timely items, Jill mentioned universal borrowing for e-resources. That might be something that would generate a very interesting and productive discussion. So I would recommend that be added maybe sometime when we get more clarity as to whether the MarinNet board will support that.
And let me just say, especially for our new board members, that this isn't set in stone, and today isn't your last chance to suggest items for the agenda. If you have any ideas that are important that you want to make sure get covered at some point, send them on to Henry, and the staff will decide what fits in each month, but they always want to hear what we suggest. The one thing you can't do for those new board members is you can't start at a meeting and say, let's discuss this today, because we're required by the Brown Act to announce in advance what our agenda topics are so that anybody who's interested can decide whether or not to attend the meeting. But please do share your ideas at any point, really, about things that are important to discuss. Rob, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, I thought at one time we were going to discuss kind of the money that's in trust, and if that's being managed and maximized the appropriate way and the best way for the future of the library. And I didn't see that on the list on the possible topics this time.
So
You go.
I was going to say, I actually think the finance director coming next month will be able to answer some of the questions about how the city invests and what its limitations are.
Sounds good. Anybody else on the board have questions or comments on what's written here? Any outside observers? Stacy, this means you. Any comments? And Stacy, if you're interested in heritage issues, sounds like September will be a good meeting for you, because that RFQ has to do with getting outside firms to comment on design or to bid on design for library alternatives. So that may be an important meeting for you or for others interested in San Rafael heritage.
I don't see any hands up right now.
Okay. All right. Then I think we are done with item 6. Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Henry. Item 7, which your incompetent board chair was obviously anxious to get to before, but now we're really here. Any brief reports on any meetings, conferences, seminars attended by board members that might be relevant to the work of the library? Raise your hand if there's anything. Okay, and I don't know that public comment would be relevant on this, but if there is something, we always like to hear from the public. All right,
No.
hearing nothing. Let's go on then to item 8, which are brief program updates on a list of things that Henry always gives us a quick report on. And I don't think we have to go item by item and say we're now on to the next item. But start right in on item A and keep going. And if anybody has questions as Henry's going, just raise your hand and we'll stop the proceedings and go to your question. So it's you, Henry.
Okay. The Parcel Tax Committee is meeting next Tuesday, the 18th. It hasn't met since the shutdown. For those who may be new to the board, the Parcel Tax Committee is their sole function is oversight of the spending of Measure D parcel tax money. They're required to meet at least 2 times a year and present a report, usually given on the last council meeting of the calendar year. Friends of San Rafael Public Library met last month, and they're intent on having a book sale on the library lawn. Tentative date looks like September 29th.
Wow.
With all the appropriate social distancing and safety protocols as defined by a site-specific plan modeled on retail from Health and Human Services. The Library Foundation met in a Zoom meeting last month, and I believe
Sorry, Henry, how in the world are we going to have a book sale with COVID restrictions? I mean, those book sales get tons of people. You have any idea what the plans are for that?
The Friends feel very bad that they haven't been selling as many books since the shutdown happened. Given that curbside retail and even indoor retail is happening, and I think the Native Plant Society had a sale at Falkirk. They are determined to have a lawn sale in the open air with social distancing and safety protocols and limiting of cash handling and all that stuff in order to raise money for the library. So that's the sum of my understanding, and we're trying to work with them to make sure that it's safe and appropriate.
Henry, can you clarify the date?
The tentative date would be the last Saturday in September at this point.
It's the 26th. Okay.
The 26th, sorry. Yeah. So that's the Friends. The foundation met last month, I believe.
Sorry, is that a question?
Yeah, do we want to wait till the end, or we're asking questions?
I think let's try it now, asking at a particular item if you have a relevant comment. See how that works.
Yeah, I just want to go back to this Friends of the Library thing. Sale. Is there a concern at all that if something doesn't happen appropriately, people are not social distancing, there's too many people, that this will fall on, you know, the library rather than the Friends of the Library? People will see it as a library responsibility of not doing the appropriate thing or measures.
So they have to submit a site plan and be approved before that they can even operate. So in order for them to even utilize the area, just like our succulent sale up at Falkirk, they had to submit, it's a pretty lengthy application with all the protocols that are listed. If for any reason there's any concerns during the event, we're right there and we would hopefully address them in real time.
Avery, where are you?
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
All right, keep going, Henry.
Library Foundation met last month. Cheryl was on that board. She was there. We discussed the upcoming appeal letter to usually the Library Foundation sends an appeal letter to their membership in the fall in conjunction with a fundraising dinner and presentation, which will likely not happen or will not happen. So that's on the major thing on the foundation's plate. The MarinNet board, questions about the foundation?
Sorry, were there questions about the foundation? I looked away for a second. I don't see any. Go ahead.
Cool. The MarinNet board met they meet on the third Thursday of the month. The board discussed possibly all going in on Canopy, the streaming music service, video service, though we did not come to an agreement that we would all provide Canopy as a group. We talked about our Khalifa membership fees, which is we pay a fee to sort of buying organization that gives us discounts on electronic resources.
Hey, Henry, sorry, can you just, since we have 2 new board members, can you just say briefly what MarinNet is and when you get to it, what NorthNet is?
Oh, good. Yeah, MarinNet. From the public perspective, many people think that all the libraries in Marin County are one entity. And they are not. About 50% of library in the county is Marin County Free Library. 15% is San Rafael Public Library with 2 or 3 locations. And then there are 7 independent libraries. I think Larkspur, San Anselmo, Mill Valley, Belvedere, Tiburon, Sausalito, College of Marin, and Dominican. So we all share books in one online catalog and have a JPA that meets, that is governed by a board of directors, which is representative of all those entities that I described. One of the big items on the agenda, which I discussed earlier, was whether we could all come together as a JPA representing all the libraries in the county to implement radio frequency ID on our books, which means each book has a radio tag on it that has the barcode number that can be scanned by a device that makes checking out books a lot more efficient. You can check out 10 books at a time. And when you return the books, depending upon the technology, they can be checked in upon return and they don't require as much staff handling. So that was on the agenda. I think our main focus continues to be responding to the pandemic. How are we doing with curbside and what we're thinking about for the future? And I'm also on another group that's a working group of the MarinNet board to sort of plan what reopening might look like. That has been delayed due to the recent surge, but there's a lot of focus on how we might provide public computing in a safe way. And we don't really have an answer yet, but we've been discussed possibly providing laptops in an outdoor location in some way, shape, or form, but it's seen as an issue where we traditionally provide computer resources to people that don't have them, and it's something that we can't or aren't currently able to do at this time.
Okay.
That concludes the MarinNet. Any questions?
I don't think so.
Just a mention of NorthNet. The difference between MarinNet and NorthNet is MarinNet is our local county consortium. It's not an official state library sanctioned consortium eligible for IMLS, Institute of Museum and Library Sciences funding. But everyone in NorthNet is part of a larger consortium that stretches from Marin County to the Oregon border. Every library north of us and us is in a consortium called NorthNet, including Sacramento and Yolo County, Solano. And they have not met recently, but one of NorthNet has its own ebook collection that we are not part of. But generally, we talk about big picture issues relating to possible grant opportunities from the state library. And now, any questions about NorthNet? Oh, okay, good. New library building update. I was going to pass it over to Susan to tell. There's not a lot of information, but
there will be next month.
Yeah. Did you want to say a few words, Susan?
Yeah, that kind of covers it. We have a meeting tomorrow with the consultant, and we'll be presenting the whole board with more information next month.
Thank you, Susan. And one more item for our city librarian update. I forward everyone the Friday memo that comes out the Friday after every council meeting. And the latest iteration of our curbside service is that we are providing curbside browsing of materials. So we have made use of the window space at the entrance on E Street to do a display of items that we're actively marketing to people when they pick up their holds. We say, here's some other items that you might like. If you like anything here, we also have a ukulele because we have a ukulele kit. If you would like to check out any of these items, let us know and we'll add that to your order. So we're trying to kind of break into that space of allowing some kind of a browsing feeling, which people haven't really been able to kind of do since we've been closed.
Are you using both windows on either side of the table for that, or just the one?
There's a sliding door and a window to the left. The window to the right of the sliding door is kind of occluded by the sliding. But if I had my druthers, we could project massive pictures of books in the Carnegie windows and out on the lawn with a laser show or something like that. But we're kind of starting small and kind of thinking how we can maximize that space. We put a little bit of a display in the mall, just telling people that curbside exists, but the mall opened and then closed. So that's not really relevant. And we're trying to also mimic this at the Pickleweed Library, where there's kind of an entryway with the little bit of kind of viewing space.
You know, I wasn't ready to talk about laser displays, but I was going to pick up on what Jamie and I think Claudia had said earlier, that, you know, there have been many, back when we had a real library that we could walk into, you guys used to have lovely displays at Black History Month, Women's History Month, holiday displays, all kinds of things. And if there's enough space in the window, or if you had 2 windows or whatever, and you could use part of it for a topical display and then the rest for just general stuff, that would be kind of cool. But I'm not sure how much space you have.
Yes, thank you. That's a great idea. The space is limited, and we've tried to mix it up in a mixture of new items and sort of topical stuff. But we'll try to, if things don't move in the space, we want to replace them often to kind of, you know, maximize the turnover there.
Can you just tell Margaret that I love her poem, please?
Yes, yes. We're going to submit version 2 in the next Friday memo, because it should have been left justified. But yeah, Margaret wrote an original poem about curbside with some kind of whimsical font usage. And yeah, we're very proud of Margaret, and I will be sure to let her know.
Yeah, I like that too.
Kind of, we don't have to talk about it now, but it also reminds me that maybe at the next meeting, can we hear any feedback you received via email or in general about this summer? Maybe, you know, what worked or didn't work for people in regards to library closures, good or bad. Just wondering if we can get some summary about that.
Sure. I think we have a lot of, at first I thought you were going to say the summer reading wrap up, which we usually would have done, but summer reading is less than it had been in the past. But yeah, we could talk about that, sort of reports on how the closure has affected the community, something like that.
Yeah, just like customer feedback, you know, people who are coming in and just curious. It's totally out of curiosity. It doesn't have to be fancy or anything. Just, you know, as you used to do. Sometimes you would give us some what people are saying, some positives and just some challenges. And just because we're in this crazy pandemic right now, just curious if you've gotten anything else. You don't have to answer now. I'm just saying.
Oh, I'd be happy to. On the whole, most people are very happy with the service. They are very kind of appreciative to get their books. There's been some confusion about the quarantine of the books has gone to 4 days. So often people will get an email that says your book's overdue or will be due, and they've already returned it. So we've been working on kind of messaging about the fact that the books are quarantined. We experienced at the Pickleweed Library that some people really had a lot of reticence checking out any books because there was a sense that they were a germ vector. So we had to kind of talk more about that we were actually doing a quarantine and how studies show that, you know, that over a certain period of time, the virus is completely gone. We have some users who are power users that tend to not check out all their books at once from the library's hold shelf. So we're encouraging people to take all their items at once to make room for the new ones. There are a limited amount of people that come and want to use the library like we used to have it, but generally that's just a couple of people. Also, the other libraries aren't doing appointments. Some of them, it's just show up and call when you're in the parking lot. So we've had a little bit of kind of like when different outlets have slightly different rules, people are used to a certain kind of way of doing things. And we've had to kind of gently sort of remind people that we are doing appointments and that the reasoning behind it. But we don't really turn anyone away if they're there and their books are available and we can provide them to them in a timely fashion, and we have time to do that. But generally, the phone's ringing off the hook from like 10 to 4 or from 12 to 6. And there's kind of a steady demand for the services. So we haven't really had a lot of behavioral issues because people kind of are outside. But you know, it's a very like reduced kind of interaction with the public, and we're trying to make that as contactless as possible. So and at this time we're not charging fines due to the kind of restricted nature of that relationship.
Thanks for the overview.
Okay, good stuff. Any other comments or questions from any board members on any of these items? How about from anybody watching from outside? Poor Stacy there, who's hung in for a long time for us. Any other
Oh, she
final
actually
comments?
left. She said the new teen center looks great. Hope the book sale and browsing service goes well. She said that in the chat.
Okay, nice. All right, well, I think we're getting to the end here. We don't, if you have future agenda items, of course, you could share them now, but you can also send emails. And as I say, the staff will try to be responsive to agenda items. And can I just say, you know, I started out by saying, instead of going person by person for comments and questions, we're going to try to do it with raising hands. Any quick comments on whether that's worked for you or whether you'd rather go to a person by person approach next time?
For me,
Adriana.
yeah, I think it works great. If you have something to say, then go for it. But if not, then we can let others who have an opinion go. Makes the meeting more dynamic, I think.
Okay, and I saw thumbs up from 3 of you. All right, at 4 of you. So with the city's permission, we'll continue in this more informal style in the future, but I may have to do a little discussion with the city on that. We'll see. All right, hearing nothing else. Oh, I'm sorry. Jamie, you want to say something? No.
Hi. That was it.
Okay.
Not a question.
We're done, everybody. Thank you very much for joining this conversation, and we'll see you next month. We're adjourned.
Thanks,
you.
Josh. Thanks, Rob.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Cheryl.
you.
Thanks, Adriana.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
Thanks for setting us up, Ginger.
Thanks.
All right.